The courtroom felt impossibly quiet. Even the softest rustle of papers seemed amplified, echoing off the polished wooden walls, bouncing back to Christine Brown like a drumbeat of tension. Each footstep on the hard floor sounded like a drum, punctuating the air with a strange gravity. She sat in the front row, clutching a letter that had changed her life, the edges slightly worn from the nights she had held it close to her chest, reading and rereading its contents until the words felt etched into her soul. Her hands trembled slightly, betraying her calm exterior. The letter was small, unassuming, yet it carried the weight of a lifetime of love, regret, and responsibility. Her heart pounded, threatening to break free from her chest. She could feel every beat like a drum warning of the storm ahead. This was more than a courtroom, more than a trial. This was the place where past, present, and future collided in a single, decisive moment. Christine stole a glance at the other sister wives seated a few rows behind her. Robin Brown's hands were folded neatly in her lap, fingers tight and controlled, but her eyes flickered with worry as they tracked Christine's every move. Robin was often calm, even in tense situations, but Christine could see the unspoken concern, the silent support she offered, like a shield. Mary Brown leaned slightly forward, her long fingers tapping against her knee. Her gaze was sharp, evaluating, as though she were calculating the room's emotional temperature. Mary always had a knack for reading people, for understanding subtle cues that escaped most. Christine appreciated Mary's presence. Her sister wife was pragmatic, sometimes brutally honest, but always there when it mattered most. Janelle Brown, sitting a bit to the side, exuded quiet strength. She was serene, almost ethereal in the way she carried herself, yet Christine could sense the tension coiled beneath the surface. Janelle had a way of grounding those around her, and just having her nearby was enough to anchor Christine when the rising tide of anxiety threatened to pull her under. The judge entered then, his black robe swishing softly against the floor. The gavel in his hand gleamed over the overhead lights. Christine's stomach clenched as the sound of the gavel striking the bench cut through the heavy silence like a distant thunderclap. "Court is now in session," he announced solemnly. His voice was calm, but carried a weight that commanded attention. The courtroom had been transformed from a neutral space into a stage of emotion. What should have been a simple legal procedure, an ordinary guardianship hearing, had morphed into something far heavier, far more personal. Christine knew that today's trial was not merely a matter of law. It was about promises kept, memories honored, and the invisible bonds that connected her to her late sister, whose letter now rested in her trembling hands. As Christine looked around the courtroom, she saw not just the judge, attorneys, and court staff, but a tapestry of faces, each carrying their own story. Family members of her late sister were seated to the side, some whispering softly to each other, others holding back tears they could not afford to shed. Friends had come, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and concern. And strangers, people who had never met her or her family, watched intently, drawn perhaps by the human drama unfolding. Every pair of eyes felt heavy, judging, questioning, witnessing. Robin shifted slightly and placed a gentle hand on Christine's shoulder. "You've got this," she whispered, her voice low but firm. Christine inhaled sharply, drawing comfort from the silent support of her sister wives. In that instant, she realized that she was not alone. She had built a network of love and strength that extended far beyond bloodlines, a collective force ready to shield her from the emotional storm that threatened to break through. Mary leaned in slightly, her dark eyes meeting Christine with intensity. "Remember why you're here," she said softly. "This isn't just about today. It's about keeping her memory alive. Don't let fear control you." Christine nodded, swallowing hard. Mary's words were like a lifeline, pulling her back from the edge of panic that had begun to creep in. Janelle, sitting with perfect posture, radiated calmness, but her eyes betrayed her concern. Christine could sense the quiet prayer behind that serene expression. She knew Janelle was silently willing the courtroom to understand, not just the letter, but the heart behind it. That silent encouragement, unspoken yet profoundly felt, reminded Christine that love was often the strongest argument in any room, even one filled with legal formalities. Christine closed her eyes for a brief moment and imagined her late sister. She pictured her smile, the way her laughter had filled a room, the warmth she radiated even in her quietest moments. Christine's chest tightened with a mixture of sorrow and determination. This trial wasn't just for the court, the lawyers, or even the witnesses. It was for her sister, whose voice now lived through the words on that fragile piece of paper. She opened her eyes again, and they immediately fell on the opposing counsel, a tall, precise man with sharp features and an air of authority. He adjusted his glasses and began flipping through a thick stack of documents. His expression was neutral, professional, but Christine could sense the subtle undercurrent of challenge in his posture. He was prepared for a legal battle, but he could not anticipate the force of love that was about to face him. The air in the courtroom was heavy, almost tangible. Every whisper, every shuffle, every subtle movement seemed magnified. Christine felt as though time had slowed, each second stretching endlessly, as if the universe itself had paused to witness what was about to unfold. She gripped the letter tighter, feeling the coarse texture of the paper against her fingers, and drew in a deep, shuddering breath. "I can do this," she whispered to herself, almost as a mantra. She glanced again at her sister wives, drawing courage from their presence. Robin's steady gaze, Mary's sharp focus, and Janelle's serene strength formed a triangle of support around her, a shield against the fear gnawing at her resolve. As the judge looked down at the documents before him, the courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Christine could feel every eye upon her, yet she also felt the invisible hand of her sister wives, holding her steady in spirit, if not in body. She understood then that she was not alone, not in grief, not in responsibility, not in love. And in that realization, Christine felt the first spark of courage ignite within her. She straightened in her seat, her trembling hands now firm on the letter. Today, she would honor the memory of her sister. Today, she would carry the weight of love into a room ruled by rules and statutes, and transform it into a place where heart mattered as much as law. The silence was still heavy, the tension palpable, but Christine no longer feared it. She had something stronger than fear, a promise, a memory, and the unyielding support of the people who mattered most. Today, the courtroom would witness not just a legal proceeding, but the quiet power of love that refused to be silenced. Christine's hands still trembled as she slowly unfolded the letter. It was worn from the night she had held it close to her chest, the ink slightly smudged from tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. Every word on that fragile sheet was a heartbeat from the past, a whisper from someone she had lost but never truly said goodbye to. She cleared her throat and lifted the letter in front of her, trying to steady her voice. The courtroom seemed to shrink around her, the polished wooden walls closing in as the weight of the moment pressed down on her shoulders. Her eyes swept over the faces in the room, family, friends, strangers, and she felt a pain of vulnerability. Every pair of eyes was waiting, judging, anticipating. But Christine reminded herself why she was here. This was not for them. It was for her sister, and for the promise she had made. Taking a deep breath, she began to read aloud. "Take care of her. Love her like I would. Protect her. Guide her. And never forget that she is family. Always." Her voice quivered at first, the words catching in her throat like stones. But as she continued, something changed. The trembling faded, replaced by a quiet strength, an unspoken resolve. These words were more than a letter. They were a lifeline, a compass, a testament to the love that had transcended death. Robin sat a few rows behind her, her hand pressed gently to her lips as she tried to hold back the tears threatening to spill. She had always admired Christine's quiet strength, but now, seeing her in this moment of raw vulnerability, she felt a swell of pride and empathy. Robin knew that no legal argument could match the force of Christine's love, and she silently offered her support, steadying Christine in ways no one else could. Mary leaned forward, her intense gaze never leaving Christine's face. There was a sharpness to Mary's eyes, a recognition of the courage it took to stand there and bare one's soul before a room of strangers. Her fingers tapped lightly against her knee, an unconscious rhythm of tension and anticipation. Mary's presence reminded Christine that she was not alone, that the women she loved and trusted were with her in spirit, lending her strength when the courtroom seemed to conspire against her. Janelle's serenity was a balm. She sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her posture elegant yet grounded. Every now and then, her lips pressed into a thin line of encouragement, a silent signal that Christine was doing the right thing. Janelle understood the power of words, the gravity of emotion, and the way a letter could become a bridge between past and present, between loss and love. As Christine read, the air in the courtroom shifted. The opposing counsel, a man whose demeanor had been precise and clinical, now seemed slightly unsettled. He paused, pen hovering above his notes, as the words penetrated the sterile walls of legal procedure. There was no argument that could rival the truth in Christine's voice, the authenticity in her delivery. Even the judge, stern and measured, leaned forward slightly, as if compelled to listen not just with his ears, but with his heart. Her voice gained strength with each line, the trembling replaced by a resonance that seemed to vibrate through the wooden panels. I trusted you because I knew you would love her as I did. I trusted you because you are family, and family never abandons one another. Please, Christine, do not let fear stop you. Do what is right. Protect her, and let her know she is loved. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. The words echoed, almost physically, bouncing off the walls and settling into every corner of the room. Christine's eyes welled with tears, but she did not stop. She could not. Her sister's voice was alive in the letter, guiding her, urging her forward, even when her own courage faltered. A quiet sniffle came from the gallery, someone crying softly. Christine did not look, but she knew the emotions were contagious. Grief, love, hope, and sorrow swirled together, filling the courtroom with a weight that no legal document could match. Robin's hand finally rose to grasp Christine's shoulder, offering a lifeline of comfort and solidarity. "You're doing amazing," she whispered, barely audible. Christine nodded, a small, shaky smile breaking through her tears. The presence of her sister wives was a shield against the vulnerability of the moment, a reminder that love could carry her through even the most public and exposed pain. Mary, ever observant, whispered something under her breath to herself. This will change everything," she murmured, watching the subtle reactions in the room, the way jurors, family, and strangers alike were being touched by the unspoken humanity of the letter. Janelle's serene eyes glistened with quiet tears. She had always understood the profound depth of emotional truth, and she recognized that Christine's courage was transcendent. It was not just the word on the page, it was the integrity behind them, the love that made them powerful, the commitment to honor a memory in the face of potential legal obstacles. Christine paused briefly, letting the weight of the letter sink in. Her gaze shifted toward the judge. He was silent, pen resting lightly on the bench, absorbing the significance of the moment. The opposing counsel, too, had lowered his gaze, and even he could not dismiss the emotional power of what had been spoken. "I loved her like a sister," Christine continued, voice cracking slightly, "and I will continue to love her, no matter what the world says. Please, let this be enough." The courtroom was still. Every movement, every breath, every heartbeat seemed magnified. Christine could feel the power of the letter in the air, wrapping around everyone present. It was no longer just a piece of paper. It was a vessel of memory, a bridge between the living and the dead, a declaration of the enduring force of family and love. Robin, Mary, and Janelle each felt a lump in their throats. They had all seen Christine's quiet strength before, but now they witnessed something rarer, her vulnerability paired with unshakable determination. It was the kind of moment that demanded respect, commanded attention, and shifted hearts. As Christine finished reading, she allowed herself a moment to breathe, the tears flowing freely now. She lowered the letter, letting it rest gently in her hands. The room remained silent, filled with the invisible residue of emotion, as though everyone present was holding their collective breath, suspended in the gravity of Christine's words. The judge finally spoke, his voice soft, measured, and thoughtful. "Thank you, Miss Brown. Your reading has been profound. The court acknowledges the sincerity and importance of these words." He paused, letting the significance hang in the air. "It is clear that the intent behind this letter carries weight that extends beyond legal considerations." Christine exhaled slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. She had spoken her truth, honored her sister, and in doing so, shifted the room in a subtle but undeniable way. Her sister wives were her anchor, their strength, their silent cheerleaders, and their presence had fortified her in ways words could not express. The opposing counsel, though still professional, now approached with a measure of respect.
He understood that this case was more than legal precedent. It was a story of love, devotion, and the profound influence of family bonds. The room had been transformed from a sterile space of law into a place where human emotion had weight and power. Christine glanced again at Robin, Mary, and Janelle, their faces reflecting pride, love, and unwavering support. She knew in that moment that no matter the outcome, she had honored her sister's memory and fulfilled her promise. The courtroom, for all its formalities and procedures, had witnessed a truth far greater than statutes or rules. Love, when spoken from the heart, is unassailable. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath after Christine finished reading the letter. The echoes of her voice, trembling and resolute, lingered in the air like an invisible weight pressing on every shoulder. For a moment, the sterile room of polished wood, law books, and gavel strikes felt more like a sanctuary, a place where honesty and love had carved a space beyond rules and statutes. But the pause ended abruptly as the opposing counsel stood, his movements sharp and precise, each step measured to convey authority. He was a tall man with neatly combed hair and glasses that reflected the overhead lights, giving him an almost clinical aura. He adjusted his notes and spoke with the cool, deliberate tone of a man trained to separate emotion from judgment. "Your Honor," he began, "while we respect the sentiments expressed in the letter, this case must be decided not on emotion, but on the best interests of the child involved. Love is important, yes, but legal guardianship requires careful consideration of stability, financial responsibility, and existing legal frameworks." Christine felt a pang in her chest. He was right in a technical sense, but he was missing the heartbeat behind the words, the living love that could not be quantified or measured. She glanced at her sister wives, each seated just a few rows behind her, and drew courage from their unwavering presence. Robin's hand rested lightly on her arm, Mary's eyes were sharp and assessing, and Janelle radiated serene calm. Together, they formed an invisible shield of strength. Christine rose to speak, her hands gripping the letter tightly. Her voice quivered slightly at first, betraying the emotional storm beneath, but then she found its rhythm, steadying herself. "This letter is not just words on paper," she said, her tone firm yet imbued with emotion. "It is a promise. It is a plea. It is a trust placed in me by someone who loved this child more than she could say." The opposing counsel raised an eyebrow, skeptical, but Christine did not falter. She continued, her voice rising slightly, not in anger but in clarity. "I am not here to argue legal technicalities. I am here to honor a life, to uphold a promise, and to ensure that love and care are not sidelined by mere formalities." Robin leaned forward, silently urging Christine to maintain eye contact with the judge, to let her words resonate not just in sound but in meaning. Mary's fingers drummed lightly against her knee, a rhythm of tension and encouragement. Janelle sat upright, serene but alert, ready to intervene if needed, offering her support with quiet strength. The courtroom shifted slightly. The opposing counsel scribbled notes, perhaps preparing to counter Christine's words, but even he seemed to sense the gravity in her voice. There was no pretense here, no showmanship. Christine's words carried weight because they were true, because they were deeply personal, because they were born from love rather than obligation. "Miss Brown," the judge interjected gently, "we acknowledge the emotional significance of the letter, but you must understand that we also consider stability, the child's existing environment, and the legal implications of guardianship." Christine's chest tightened. She understood the judge's duty, and she respected it, but she could not let the conversation reduce her sister's last words to mere sentimentality. Taking a deep breath, she said, "Your Honor, the stability of this child's environment is not defined solely by finances or schedules. Stability comes from love, guidance, and the assurance that someone is devoted to her well-being. My sister entrusted me with this responsibility because she knew I would care with every ounce of my heart." The opposing counsel rose again, his tone measured and professional, yet Christine could detect the subtle frustration beneath it. "Miss Brown, your emotional appeal is noted, but guardianship is determined by concrete evidence, employment, home environment, and the ability to provide resources. The court cannot base its decision on letters and feelings alone." Christine's gaze hardened, but her voice remained steady. "I am aware of that, and I am prepared to provide evidence of stability. But I ask you, can you measure love?"
Can you quantify the comfort of a warm embrace, the guidance of a patient voice, the reassurance of someone who will never abandon a child? My sister's wish is more than a letter. It is a lifeline for this child, a promise that she will never face the world without someone to stand beside her. Mary whispered under their breath, "Yes, show them what they can't see." Christine felt the surge of courage ripple through her. She no longer spoke just for herself, but for her sister, for the child, and for the unspoken understanding that love could not be measured in legal forms alone. The courtroom murmured quietly. Even the witnesses shifted, their attention sharpened by the sincerity of Christine's words. The opposing counsel adjusted his glasses, clearly unsettled by the power of something he could not argue against. Words of law were structured, precise, and procedural, but love, raw and undeniable, had an edge that formalities could never match. Robin finally reached forward and touched Christine's hand, squeezing it gently. No words were necessary. The presence of her sister wives was a tangible force of support, reminding Christine that she was not alone in this fight. Janelle's calm eyes met hers, silently conveying reassurance, while Mary's sharp gaze remained vigilant, assessing every reaction in the room. Christine allowed herself a moment to breathe, centering herself before continuing. "I ask the court to see beyond the documents, see beyond the numbers and schedules. Look at what my sister wanted most, to ensure her child is loved, cared for, and guided. That is stability, Your Honor. That is what matters most." The judge's expression softened slightly. He nodded, acknowledging the depth of her argument. The opposing counsel, still composed, made a final attempt. "While we appreciate your passion, Miss Brown, the law requires us to weigh factors evenly. Emotion alone cannot determine guardianship." Christine's eyes flashed with quiet determination.
I do not ask for emotion alone. I offer my life, my home, my commitment, and the promise of a love that has been entrusted to me. That is evidence too, though it may not fit neatly into a legal box. My sister knew this. She trusted me with her greatest treasure. I cannot, will not betray that trust. The courtroom fell into silence. Even the opposing counsel paused, pen hovering over paper. The words had landed not as an argument, but as truth, unadorned, unbreakable, and profoundly human. The air was heavy with emotion, the tension palpable, and yet there was a sense of clarity emerging. This was not just a legal proceeding. It was a moment where the heart met the law, and perhaps, just perhaps, the heart would guide the law. Robin, Mary, and Janelle exchanged glances, each silently acknowledging Christine's courage. They had witnessed her strength before, but now they saw her heart fully exposed, beating in front of a room full of strangers. And yet there was no fear, only resolve, only love. Christine returned her gaze to the judge, holding his attention with the quiet force of sincerity. She knew she had spoken truth. She knew she had honored her sister, and she knew in the deepest part of her being that the courtroom could not diminish the promise she carried. The judge leaned back slightly, reflecting on the unprecedented weight of the moment. This court will consider the emotional significance of Miss Brown's words, alongside all legal factors, he said carefully. It is clear that there is more here than documents alone. We must weigh intention, trust, and the welfare of the child, and I will take this into account in my deliberations. Christine exhaled slowly, the tension in her body easing slightly. The battle of words had been hard fought, but she had held her ground. The courtroom, once a place of sterile procedure, had become a witness to love, courage, and the power of truth spoken from the heart. The opposing counsel returned to his seat, his face composed but tinged with a newfound respect. He had faced many legal arguments in his career, but few that carried the weight of lived love, of promise, of family bonds that transcended rules. Christine's words had pierced through the courtroom's formalities and left an undeniable mark. Robin leaned in, her voice a whisper of encouragement. "You've done it. You've made them see." Christine's lips curved into a small, tearful smile. She had not won the case yet, but she had won something equally powerful: the recognition of her sister's love, the validation of her commitment, and the unwavering support of the women who had stood beside her. For Christine Brown, the courtroom was no longer just a place of legal argument. It was a stage upon which the human heart had been laid bare, and in that space, love had spoken louder than law. Hours had passed in the courtroom.
Christine's voice had grown hoarse from reading and speaking, but her heart remained steadfast, fueled by the memory of her sister and the presence of her sister wives. The room had been a theater of tension, emotion, and legal debate, yet now it felt like a place suspended between hope and fear, where every heartbeat counted. Christine sat back in her chair, letting her trembling hands rest on her lap. The letter she had read earlier still lay folded gently beside her, a fragile testament to the love that had carried her through the battle. She could feel exhaustion weighing on her shoulders, but it was tempered by a strange sense of anticipation. This moment, she realized, was beyond herself. It belonged to her sister, to the child, to everyone who had invested trust in her. Robin reached over, placing her hand lightly on Christine's arm. "You've done everything you could," she whispered, her voice steady, almost grounding. "Whatever happens, you honored her." Christine nodded, a lump forming in her throat. She drew comfort from the solidarity of her sister wives, Mary, whose sharp gaze had never wavered, and Janelle, whose serene presence radiated calm reassurance. Together, they were more than witnesses. They were pillars of strength that carried her through the emotional storm. The judge cleared his throat, his voice cutting through the heavy air. "We have reviewed all evidence, considered testimony, and reflected on the letter presented by Miss Brown," he said, his tone measured but not unkind. Christine's hands tightened into fists, knuckles white, as she leaned forward slightly, straining to catch every word. He paused, looking over the courtroom with a thoughtful expression. While the law provides a framework for guardianship, it also allows for discretion when intention, trust, and the welfare of the child are clearly demonstrated. In this case, the sincerity of Miss Brown's commitment is evident. The court recognizes that love, guidance, and dedication are fundamental to a child's well-being. A soft gasp escaped Christine's lips. Her heart leapt, a surge of hope mingling with fear. Hope that this recognition was only the beginning, fear that the final decision could still overturn the emotional argument. She glanced at her sister wives. Robin's eyes glistened,
Mary's expression softened with approval, and Janelle's lips curved in a quiet, supportive smile. They had been her anchors, her unwavering support, and now they shared in the suspense of the moment. The opposing counsel shifted uncomfortably in his seat, adjusting his tie, clearly aware that the emotional weight of Christine's argument had shifted the balance in ways that legal precedent could not fully contain. He had relied on facts, schedules, and financial stability, yet the room's energy had been altered by the undeniable power of love, commitment, and human connection. The judge continued, his voice gentle but firm. It is clear that Miss Brown has not only the ability but also the desire to provide a loving, stable environment. Her dedication to the child, combined with the trust expressed in the letter, demonstrates that she is fully capable of fulfilling the responsibilities of guardianship. Christine's chest tightened. The words were slow to register, and for a moment she felt as if she were floating between disbelief and relief. Her hands clutched the letter instinctively, as though holding it close could solidify the decision she hoped to hear. She dared not exhale, fearing that any movement might shatter the fragile balance of this moment. Robin leaned closer, whispering softly, "It's happening. You're gonna do this." Christine's lips trembled as she nodded, tears threatening to spill over. She had fought with every ounce of courage, every fragment of strength, and now it seemed the universe was acknowledging the righteousness of her cause. The judge's voice grew even more solemn. "Therefore, the court finds in favor of Miss Christine Brown. Guardianship shall be granted, honoring both the wishes of the deceased and the demonstrated capability of Miss Brown to provide care, stability, and love." The gavel struck the bench with a resounding echo, breaking the silence and releasing a flood of emotion that had been held in check for hours. Christine's shoulders sagged as tears streamed freely down her cheeks. She could barely breathe, the weight of relief, grief, and overwhelming joy mingling in a torrent she could not contain. Robin immediately reached out, wrapping her arms around Christine in a warm, supportive embrace. "You did it," she whispered, her own tears mixing with Christine's. Mary placed a gentle hand on Christine's back, her eyes glistening with tears of admiration, while Janelle simply held Christine's hand, her calm presence radiating a quiet sense of completion. Around the courtroom, the atmosphere had shifted.
Witnesses wiped away tears, family members hugged each other, and even some strangers were visibly moved by the display of emotion and humanity. This was no longer just a legal proceeding. It was a testament to the enduring power of love, trust, and family bonds. Christine stood slowly, still holding the letter, and looked toward the gallery where her late sister's family sat. She saw their eyes, glistening with unshed tears, and she felt the full weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. This was not victory in the usual sense. It was something deeper, more profound. A continuation of a legacy, a fulfillment of a promise, a chance to honor someone she had loved and lost. She inhaled deeply, steadying herself, and turned toward her sister wives. "We did it," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "No, Christine," she said softly. "You did it. You carried the weight. We were just here to remind you of your strength." Mary nodded, her usual sharp expression softened with pride. "You showed everyone here what family truly means," she said. "It's not just about rules or documents. It's about heart, integrity, and love. And you've shown them all." Janelle squeezed Christine's hand gently. "This is more than a victory in court," she said, her serene voice carrying immense warmth. "This is a triumph of love, commitment, and faith in what is right." Christine's eyes flicked to the letter once more, the paper now a sacred symbol of her sister's enduring presence. She whispered a quiet thank you to the woman who had trusted her so completely, the woman whose guidance now transcended death. "I promise," Christine murmured. "I will protect her. I will guide her. I will love her as you would have." The courtroom slowly emptied, the gavel's echo replaced by soft murmurs and footsteps. But Christine remained for a moment, standing quietly, absorbing the gravity of the day. It was not just a personal triumph. It was a moment of justice, not measured solely by law, but by the moral weight of love and trust. As she stepped out into the hallway, the sunlight streaming through the tall windows felt different somehow, brighter, warmer, infused with possibility. Her sister wives flanked her, each offering silent support as they walked together. It was a rare moment of shared triumph, one that transcended rivalry, tension, or difference. They were united by witnessing the extraordinary resilience of the human heart, embodied in Christine's unwavering dedication. Christine's thoughts returned to the child, to the responsibility now entrusted to her. She understood that guardianship was more than a legal status. It was a vow of protection,
a promise to nurture, and a commitment to uphold the values her sister had held dear. And in that commitment, she felt a profound sense of purpose and fulfillment, a sense that she was exactly where she was meant to be. For Robin, Mary, and Janelle, the day had been a revelation as well. They had seen the power of courage and love in their purest forms, and they had stood witness to a story that would remain etched in their memories forever. In the quiet moments after the courtroom emptied, they exchanged glances filled with unspoken admiration and gratitude. Gratitude for Christine's strength, for the family they shared, and for the enduring bonds that had carried them through this emotional journey together. Christine finally allowed herself to exhale fully, letting the weight of hours of tension, grief, and anticipation flow out of her. She felt lighter, yet profoundly anchored in responsibility. Justice had been served, not only in the eyes of the law, but in the eyes of her sister, her family, and her own heart. And as she held the letter close one last time before placing it carefully in her bag, she knew that the promise she had made was now a living reality. The courtroom, the battle, and the tears were behind her. Ahead lay a life shaped by love, guidance, and the fulfillment of a vow. And in that knowledge, Christine Brown smiled through her tears, ready to embrace the future with courage, compassion, and an unbreakable bond of family. Days had passed since the courtroom decision, but the echoes of that moment lingered in Christine Brown's heart. The letter, once fragile in her hands, had become a symbol of unwavering trust and a reminder of the promise she had made. Though the legal battle was over, Christine knew that the true work had just begun. Guardianship was more than paperwork. It was a living commitment, one that required love, patience, and vigilance every single day. She sat in her quiet home, the afternoon sunlight spilling softly through the windows, illuminating the letter that now rested in a small framed box on her mantel. Christine traced her fingers over the faded handwriting, feeling the presence of her sister in each delicate stroke.
Every day, every moment would carry the responsibility of honoring those words. Take care of her, love her like I would. Robin entered the room, carrying 2 cups of tea. She set one gently beside Christine and sat down, folding her hands in her lap. You've done so much already, she said softly. Not just in court, but in the way you've embraced this responsibility. You've made her proud. Christine smiled faintly, but her eyes glistened. I hope so, she murmured. Every decision I make now, every choice I have to navigate, it all feels like walking a tightrope. I want to do right by her, by my sister, by everyone who trusted me. Mary arrived next, placing a comforting hand on Christine's shoulder. You're doing more than right, she said, her voice steady and firm. You've proven that love can be stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. That courtroom moment, it wasn't just about winning. It was about showing the world what family really means. Christine leaned back, letting herself absorb the warmth of her sister-wife's presence. Janelle, serene as ever, sat beside her and nodded gently. The love you carry now isn't just for the child or for your sister, she said softly. It's for yourself, too. You've shown strength that you may not even realize. The house was filled with a quiet sense of peace, but Christine knew it was temporary. Guardianship meant responsibility, feeding, nurturing, guiding, teaching, and protecting. She would have to make hard decisions, face unforeseen challenges, and navigate the complexities of growing up. But she also knew she was not alone. Her sister wives had been her support throughout the trial, and now they were her companions in life, ready to stand beside her in every moment of triumph and trial. Christine thought back to the courtroom, the tension, the opposing counsel, and the judge's words. Every heartbeat of that day had been a test, and she had emerged stronger, more resolute. But the real test would be ongoing. Every time she comforted the child during a sleepless night, every time she guided her through life's small and large challenges, every time she whispered the words her sister had entrusted to her. Robin poured her a cup of tea and handed it over. You don't have to carry it alone, she said softly. You've got us. Christine smiled, feeling the bond of family in its truest form. The courtroom had been a proving ground, but her home was now a sanctuary, a place where promises were lived, not just spoken. Mary spoke again, her tone thoughtful. You know, the courtroom was filled with strangers, but love can't be measured by their understanding. The child will feel it every day, and that's what truly matters. That's the legacy you're creating. Janelle nodded in agreement, her calm eyes reflecting the depth of her understanding. Legacy isn't written in documents or court decisions. It's written in small moments, smiles, hugs, guidance, and unwavering support. You're already building it. Christine glanced at the framed letter, the words of her sister glowing softly in the light. I never thought a single piece of paper could hold so much power, she said quietly. It's changed my life. It's changed hers too, I hope. Robin squeezed her hand. It has, and it always will. Every time you make a choice out of love, every time you show patience,
Every time you teach her what family means, you're honoring her memory. The child herself was now part of Christine's daily rhythm. Each morning she awoke with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to greet the day with care and dedication. Every decision was measured not just by practicality, but by love, by the promise Christine had made to her, her sister, to herself, and to the child. The days turned into weeks, and each moment brought new challenges and new joys. There were nights filled with tears and frustrations, mornings brightened by laughter and shared stories, and countless quiet moments where Christine simply held the child close, feeling the weight of trust and the warmth of family. Robin, Mary, and Janelle were always nearby, offering guidance, support, and love. They celebrated small victories together: the child's first school performance, a successful baking experiment, a difficult lesson learned with patience. And in these moments, Christine saw clearly the profound truth she had discovered in the courtroom: that love, commitment, and integrity were far stronger than any legal argument. One evening, Christine sat by the fireplace. The child curled up beside her, reading a story together. The letter sat nearby, a constant reminder of the journey they had taken. Christine realized that the courtroom had been only the beginning. True guardianship, true responsibility, was lived every day in these small, intimate moments. The bedtime stories, the reassurances, the teaching of right and wrong, the guidance through life's trials. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "I will always keep my promise."
I will always love her as you would have. The child looked up and smiled, her trust evident in the innocent way she leaned against Christine. And in that moment, Christine understood fully. Promises made with the heart are eternal. They live on in every act of love, every word of guidance, every embrace. Robin, Mary, and Janelle joined her by the fire, creating a circle of family around the child. The warmth of the room mirrored the warmth of their bond, a bond forged through trials, strengthened by love, and solidified by unwavering support. The legacy of care, compassion, and devotion would continue, not in a courtroom, but in the hearts of those who lived it every day. As night fell, Christine looked at the framed letter one last time before turning off the light. It was no longer just a piece of paper. It was a living promise, a guide, and a testament to the enduring power of love. She understood now that guardianship was not a task to be checked off. It was a way of life, a daily commitment, and a reflection of the person her sister had trusted her to be. In the quiet of her home, surrounded by the women who had supported her and the child who depended on her, Christine felt a profound peace. The courtroom battles, the tears, the tension, all had led to this moment of clarity. Justice had been served, not just in law, but in love. And that love, nurtured each day, would continue to grow, shaping a life, a family, and a promise that would never be broken. Christine whispered one final thought into the night, a vow to herself, to her sister, and to the child she now guided. Your love lives on in me, in her, and in every choice I make. This promise will never end. And with that, she turned off the light, the soft glow of the fireplace illuminating a room filled with warmth, trust, and an unbreakable bond of family. The journey of guardianship had only begun, but Christine knew that with love as her guide, every challenge could be met, every fear overcome, and every promise kept.